All right, everyone, welcome back to EdUp Edge. This is a place where we get to talk about all things career schools, leadership, and life hacks. And I am your host, Kathy Belletti. Today is going to be a very special show for two reasons. One, we get to talk about one of my absolute favorite topics, admissions. All things admissions. And second, I have one of my favorite people here with me today. Okay, this guy is an admissions guru, okay, in all aspects of the term. All right,
Right.
he is an amazing coach and he's my inspiration. I'm super excited to have him with us to talk us through the pains and the wins of admissions and admissions coaching. So, welcome, Brian.
Thanks for having me, Kathy. It's so exciting to finally be here and really have a good discussion on admissions and help the world get a little better in our world, right?
Absolutely. Look, Brian, it's a long time coming. This may have to be like a 10-part series, but we'll see what happens.
Well, hey, as long as it stays fun and we help a lot of people, that's what we're here to do, right?
Absolutely. So, Brian, I know our listeners want to know, okay, who is Brian Maggio? Okay. How did you start your journey in higher education?
Yeah, I think like everyone else, I kind of fell into it. Like most of our stories kind of start. I was in the Navy for a long time and in Navy recruiting, and then really my first job out of the Navy was as a director of admissions. And it was very similar to Navy recruiting at that time, 18 years ago, but completely different at the same time.
Yeah.
But we put the first class in there and I went to the first graduation. I mean, I was hooked, right? I mean, just the impact that you have that you don't realize on a day-to-day basis, but when you see it all come together, it is quite an experience. And I think that's where there's a lot of people that they may leave for a while and they come back because
Yeah.
it's tough to replace that feeling of helping people in that way, right? So that's really how I got into it. It was sort of that first job coming out and fell in love with it and just really just been doing it ever since in various ways, whether it's marketing or training or managing or
Mhm.
enrolling students myself, and uh, it, it's been an extremely rewarding career.
Absolutely. Brian, how do you go from the Navy but straight into an enrollment leader? Though a lot
Well,
of times there's like a gray area in between there, and then you kind of work your way up.
yeah, I think the similarities of running a recruiting area and multiple
Mm,
offices kind of lended itself at that time to coming into a large team. I think when I walked in, there were 10 or 11 admissions representatives, a couple of high school representatives. And because, you sort of recruited the same way, you visited high schools, you uh,
got it.
made the phone calls and those things, it really kind of was a good merge of what I was bringing to the table, as well as they wanted at the time an outside perspective to bring a fresh perspective to what they were doing. And
Got it.
um, that's sort of how that went. And the people in the building, I'm sure the admissions representatives were like, wait a minute, he's never even worked in the school. Why is he in charge? Um, but we ended up really doing a good job over a few years of growing that school. And once you get that in you, it's hard to not want to continue to help that process, right?
Yeah. You know what is funny because there's so many people that I've known who started off in admissions and they've gone on to do other things. And now
Right.
when I talk to them, they're like, yeah, I came back. It's like this force that's pulling you back. You can't escape. Once you're admissions, you'll always be admissions.
Oh, I think so. I
My
think it's something you take to heart, especially if you really love the process of what you're doing, and like I said, that's a very hard feeling to eliminate from yourself, no matter what else you're doing, right? So
yeah. You were a car salesman at some point in your journey.
yeah, well, I spent several years, traveling the country and training admission seminars with a great mentor and friend of mine,
Uh-huh.
and there's little pockets in there where training's got downtime. So I said, let me go see if I can figure out how they sell cars. Maybe I can write a training program about it, right? And I figured out very quickly after about a week of standing outside in the hot Louisiana sun and my skin color changing 3 different shades. I said, this isn't going to work, right? So I started. I was like, what do I know how to do, right? I
Mhm.
know how to motivate people. I know how to make motivational videos. So that's what I did. I was like, I'll just create this thing, and I just started making this series called Auto Motivation with Brian. And every day I'd get there before everyone, and I'd film these little 30-second little motivation videos. I
Uh-huh.
never talked about a car, right? And after a few weeks, it was the funniest thing. People started coming in asking for the Facebook guy. So I got to learn a lot about how to promote myself on Facebook and get the message out. And then other dealers were calling the owner, going, "Who is this guy? What are you doing over there?" Because I was like, targeting right over their dealerships.
Uh-huh.
But it was a lot of fun. I spent several months doing it. Had a really good time because it became easy because I was using the tools and the resources, and I was using the skills that I had. And
Mhm.
um, when I'm training people, that's what I tell them. I'm like, what are the skills that you already have, right? Like, don't lose those,
Exactly.
because very important to bring yourself to the table as well if you want to have a lot
Mhm.
of success.
Exactly. So, okay, with the car salesman, we know that when it comes to career education, right, we use some sales aspects.
Right.
And a lot of times, higher ed, we don't like to embrace the term sales, and they always relate it back to old school car salesmen,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Would you say that it's right in line with what people are saying about that term, or like, are there some similarities? What is the turnoff with
Yeah.
people when it comes to that?
Well, I think mainly over the 18 years of me being around just about every type of admissions group there is.
Yeah.
Um, I think the turnoff really comes because there was a point somewhere along the line where the the scripts were so long and so daunting. Like, the
Yeah.
first one that I ever got was like 13 pages long, and
My
it
gosh.
was almost like you got to a point where you were asking them, what color is your dog at home, right? Like, do you have a backup dog? What happens if that backup dog can't like come? It was just a lot, and you could watch, and we did this. We watched a student interview go from the student being really excited to about
Bored.
just like this. Here's my money, just let me leave. And that's really what it became. So over time, though, I think because that was such a negative experience, like, nobody wants to go into a car dealership because it takes 5 hours to buy your car, right? It was almost the same thing early on in my career, where you would be in a school for 2.5 hours just trying to get registered for classes. And
Dang.
um, but over time, I think as the school started to see how rough that was, right,
Mhm.
for a student to go through, you started seeing changes and new trainings coming out, ways to
Yeah.
work with a student where it was more conversational. So I just sort of brought that to that car sales element too. I'm like, I'm going to treat you like you're an actual person that I'm trying to help.
Mhm.
And the process of it, though, which I think is unique, the process of going through, say, an interview for selling marketing, selling cars, selling
Mhm.
whatever, and the process of working with a student is exactly the same in if you go down the line. It's
Mhm.
just, how do you want those conversations to feel on the other side of the table? Um, so yeah, I think early the industry got some really rough, reviews of this interview process. Well, now, when I first started, and they would walk out the door and tell 5 people. Well, now they are in your office and they're telling 500,000 people that this is
Exactly.
terrible, right? So I think the times forced it to become more that, um, consultant type, consultative. Let's make this a great experience, but also let's follow a strategy that brings us to a close at some point,
Yeah.
and be cognizant of people's time, right? That's a big deal, right? So yeah, I think over time, though, I think it's gotten much better. And
Mhm.
as we watch the new tools and the new things, like, I mean, you had Eric on a show a while back with text chat, and I
Yeah.
just think they created something remarkable because it's real people that are having conversations with real people. And to me, it used to be, people would go research, right, and try to
Yeah.
figure out what's the best school, how do I make it different,
Hmm.
different. Well, when it comes to large decisions that are going to cost you something, individuals still want to talk to a person when it gets down to the final details,
Yes.
always. And I think we've gotten better at that in admissions over the last several years. Some of it forced, I think,
Yeah.
but also just being more aware of what's happening out in the digital space, right?
Yeah.
Marketing is so much more unique. You can reach people and then keep sending them your ads and all these things, and then they can research forever now. There's endless amounts of information, right?
Absolutely.
So the poor admissions representative who's ready to, like, okay, let's get you in here for an appointment and let's talk about these things. I think what lacks in training is that they're going to come to you already with some knowledge, right?
Yes.
But they go into these interviews sometimes like, okay, you don't know anything at all. Let's go,
Hmm.
right? So when I train, I try to say, look, ask them up front, what do you already know? Where
No,
are you
exactly.
in your decision to go to school? How is your research coming, right? Because to me, that makes a more fun experience for the student, right? Because they're now a part of it versus going through it.
Exactly, exactly. And I think what happens is sometimes advisors tend to put students in a box. So they think everyone is starting at the same exact level. And now it becomes embarrassing where a student is correcting the advisor and they're like, well, that's not exactly correct because I've been doing this
Absolutely.
for like 10 years. Now
Hmm.
the advisor is like, oh my gosh. And you just lost trust in the entire
Absolutely.
interview.
100%. And you're still going through your spiel, and they're just like, okay, got to get out of here. All right, let me go.
Time's up.
Yeah.
You know, Brian, it's funny that you brought up with the car salesman the process because a lot of times when people talk about it, they compare it to aggressive sales, not so much how long the process is, but when you really think of it from that aspect, it's like, yeah, some students feel as if they were trapped as soon as they got into your school. It's like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, where's the exit? I have to go. And the advisor is like, I still got 3 more floors to go. Then you got to meet with financial aid. We got to take a tour. And
Oh,
it's like,
yeah.
oh,
Right. And the more and more regulations that come out, the longer the paperwork pile gets that they have to fill out. Right. I've watched them go, do I have to write my name again for the 37th time? Yes. Yes, you
yeah.
do. You have to do that. Um, yeah, I think that aggressiveness approach came because, when you look at what do we do at admission? Our job is to fill classes, right? And we know how many students need to go into those classes.
Yeah.
And when a representative is struggling to get enough appointments, they are struggling when people come in to get enough of them to say, yes, this is the choice I want to make for my new career. I think that's when that monster comes out, that aggressive desperation monster, because their upfront process has been failing them. And it could be because they just couldn't take in all the training they've been given, or the pressure of it all is getting to them. So they're taking shortcuts and they're failing
Yeah.
with the shortcuts they're taking, but yet now it's just making it worse. And I think the natural negative starts to come out because you're trying to survive now, right? But yet I think that's where that aggressiveness comes from, because taking a student and showing them, what it is a new career. And I tell lots of people, I said, don't talk about your program. Talk about the career options, because this person may have
Exactly.
picked a program out of the sky,
Mm-hmm.
and they come into you like, yes, this is what I've been wanting to do my whole life. Okay, tell me about that, because you're like 20, right?
Uh,
Help me understand your whole life, and
uh-huh.
why haven't you done anything yet, like, toward this? Um, so I always say, let's look at, what career areas can you see yourself being a good fit for based on what you've already researched. And
Mm-hmm.
you can have somebody that comes in looking at your, IT program, and they end up in your business program because that's a better fit for the main thing that I think people skip over in admissions interviews, or they do it, but it's not like a wholehearted thing, which is
Mhm.
a real goal. Like,
Yeah.
right? Because education is just the bus that takes you to your goal or towards your goals, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes it's just the checkbox that you need in order to apply, right?
Yeah.
So options is the key word. That's what we do in career college. We give people options they did not have when they first walked in the door.
Yeah. You know what? I think the process is overcomplicated, right? Because I always say process versus prospect, right? So
Right.
most advisors are so hooked up in the process that they forget about the prospect. So it
Correct.
goes back to like my very first interview. I would never forget this because he was my first grad. And I went through 2 weeks of admissions training. I had my first interview by myself. I sat in the room. I have my presentation set up. He sat in front of me and I opened my mouth and nothing came out.
Yeah.
Nothing. He was looking at me, I'm looking at him, and I'm like, oh my gosh, my mind is blank. And something said, Kat, just start a conversation. And
Right.
all I said was, what brought you here today? And he said, well, I'm from Nigeria. I wanted to take the cardiovascular program because I want to take those skills back to, you know, and open up some additional medical facilities in my village.
Oh, wow.
And it was just common sense. I said, wait a minute, we have the cardiovascular program. Does he qualify? I started asking him about his education. He qualified. And it was like this process was so simple. What do you need? Do I have it or not? I actually do. Now,
Yeah.
how do I get that resource to you? You have to qualify. He met the qualifications. That
Okay.
was my first enrollment, my first graduate, and I still have the necklace of teeth that he brought me
Oh, wow. That's
from the
awesome.
village. And that was over 18 years ago.
Yeah, people that value, or if you have a real good quality conversation, like something
Uh-huh.
that is meaningful, that you can actually go down the list and say, I call this a quality conversation. It's so meaningful to people that you were able to connect with them. They had a want or a need that they were really just trying to figure out, how do I take care of this, right? And you had a conversation that allowed them to come up with the answer they were looking for, not you planting it into them and saying, "This is really what I believe you should be doing." Well, who are you, right? Like, right? And I think that, to me, is probably the most powerful stories that keep people working in admissions, because they all had. It doesn't matter how many senior reps you talk to, DOAs,
Yeah,
VPs of admissions, whatever title people have at a certain point in their career, they're going to have a story like that,
yeah,
right? They're going to have that family who was struggling, and they walk across the stage of graduation, and you see like this huge amount of people holding up signs, and it's
yes,
like this magical moment for this
hmm,
individual, and you're like, I had a part in that. Like a
yeah,
little tiny part was mine, and because of the conversation we had, I'll remember them forever, right? And they'll probably remember
exactly.
me forever. And that's the beauty of honing the craft of admissions,
Yeah,
right? So there are there are things that are being created, admissions credentials, right? So there's something you can go after,
hmm,
and I love that concept that you can move up in title, but like, what makes you like certified that this is the role I'm doing, right? And I think people are seeking those kind of things, and you're starting to see those kind of things being created for our industry,
yeah,
which is an amazing step, I think, to giving people something to strive for. Your program online with training, same thing. I need a
yeah,
backup. I need some places I can go and just let my skills kind of refresh me, right?
yeah.
So no, I think that story right there is sort of the catalyst of what keeps people wanting to become more and more successful in admissions.
Absolutely. I think the other aspect is the pressure that's placed on advisors
Yeah,
without the training and support.
right.
You know, I always say, look, if you're going to give an outlandish expectation, that's fine, but tell your team this is how we're going to get there. This is how you make it happen. But I've been finding that so many advisors are leaving the industry because they have these huge goals and they're like, how am I supposed to get there? And the leader is like, come up with a plan. And it's like, isn't that your role to help me, develop a plan?
Right.
Then burnout happens and they leave.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you bring that up. I was talking to a friend of mine, I don't know, a few months back, and he's a trainer, great trainer.
Mhm.
And excuse me. And he called me and he said, Brian, I've been training and training and training on uh, the interview process, and our enrollment rates are not going up. I don't know what else to do. Like, I'm looking at our enrollment conversion is just terrible. I'm like, okay, well, I'll help. I'm all like you. I'll help. What do you need? What do you need from me? And so I met with all of his advisors, and I had
Mhm.
them do like a 5 minute, real quick. I'm here to talk about going to school. Go, right.
Yeah.
And that in that 5 minutes, I'm like, man, their interviews sound really good, right? They're really starting off by connecting and those sort of things. So I went back to him and I said, I don't see any problems with the interview that they're giving. I mean, if I was a qualified student, I would enroll. And the
Mhm.
moment that came out of my mouth, if you look at their reports, their enrollment conversion rates were bad. The moment if I was a qualified student, I would enroll came out of my mouth, my brain said, go listen to their appointment setting calls.
Ah.
So that's what we did. And in those appointment setting calls, I had him listen to some and I listened to some. And I said, okay, what did you hear? He said, oh, man, they sound good. They're setting a ton of appointments. I said, but what did you not hear? They asked no questions about will the person even be qualified when they come over here to even try to enroll in school.
Mhm.
So I had all the reps send me over the last 30 days how many were qualified and how many
Uh-huh.
were not. Their enrollment conversion was like 90% from the
Wow.
qualified ones.
Mhm.
So now they're training on appointment setting skills. So sometimes, even as you get up to these larger levels of admissions leadership, that report is not always going to lead you to the actual problem. So you have to dig a little deeper sometimes, because if you're training on those interviews,
Mhm.
the pressure's coming to get more people to start school. They are enrolling almost everyone that's qualified, and they're looking at you like, give me more qualified people, right?
Yeah.
So then they start to blame marketing, and then they start to blame training, and then they start to. But as a leader, you have to try to go to that next level of thought process and say, what could it really be? Right.
Mhm.
And then just investigate. And the good thing about that is we have scripts and we have tools that they're using in most cases. Okay. Let's be honest. Some of them just say, "Oh, this is a
Exactly.
great script." It makes me sound like a robot, and they throw it out. Right? They don't know how to use it, which is why it
Mhm.
sounds like a robot. But sometimes you can get lost in the reports and
Yeah.
not look at the real problem, and you just start putting a lot of energy into the wrong thing
Mhm.
and burn people out because they're like, "Look, all right, I don't have a problem putting people in school when they're qualified," and then they're like, "Forget it, I'm leaving." Right? And that's happened a lot over my 18 years of right, and it takes a lot of to replace a representative takes a lot of time and a lot of energy,
Boy.
right? So
Mhm.
how do we as an industry stop that trend? And I
Mhm.
really think it's by doing a better job of understanding where they're truly struggling.
Yeah.
Because if you spend the time, and I know, look, when you're way up the ladder of admission, you can't spend time doing that. Your bandwidth is already like, okay, we need to grow this, grow that. But
Uh-huh.
as you have those direct reports down there, it's really about figuring out where are you focusing your energy, where are you trying to fix the problem, and then having a conversation in your one-on-one to try to get that done, right? And
Mhm.
I think there's a lack of that because you
Yeah.
wouldn't you wouldn't see those conversion rates so poor if we were really digging into, do they really have the resources, or are they just making stuff up now because they're trying to keep the pressure off? And that sounds bad, but um, give me 15
Yeah.
appointments a week.
Mhm.
Oh wow, look, they're all of a sudden giving me 15 appointments a week, where for 6 months they were giving me six. They just magically got better all of a sudden, right? Um, so you really have to like give what you're looking for, right?
Mhm.
Very clearly, it's very clear what we're looking for, and then okay, help me understand how we're going to get there and work together with a representative. And I tell you, People want to work hard. No one
Yes.
shows up in the admissions office and goes, "It's failure day. It's failure day. I'm here to do it." Nobody does that, right? Nobody in the world does that. They sit there and go, they sit down, they come in, they look at their computer and go,
Yep.
right? And
Yep.
I've seen that so many times over and over. And it's like that in any type of sales element, whether you're if you don't have a leader that is giving you sort of the ability to learn how to strategize,
Mm-hmm.
right? Your appointment setting, it's a strategy to have a quality conversation. Your interview, it's a strategy to help that student get the information they need, show them the value of what your school can do, show them what the program could do for their future,
Exactly.
and then give them the assistance necessary to get through that process of registration, which isn't always easy, right?
Exactly. It helps also when advisors understand what conversions are. I always say the beauty about admissions is you can manage your own expectations by going back a step. If you know no one is showing up for your interviews and you see your conversions at all are off, you can say, okay, what am I saying on the phones? If you have all these people showing up for interviews and no one is enrolling, as an advisor, you can say, okay, what is happening in my interviews? You can manage your own expectations, but Brian, I have been working
I
with
know.
new reps and struggling advisors, and there are people who've been in admissions for months now. And when I say, okay, so talk to me about your show rates, they're like, what's that?
Yeah.
I had an advisor 2 days ago say to me, my goal is 10, I'm at 8, I'm doing really good. And I said, let's talk about show rate. Do you know what a show rate is? Do you know
Yeah.
gross versus net? And they're like, I was never taught that. This advisor has a goal of 10. They're at 8 and they're about to stop because
Yep.
they think they have two more. And it's like, no, if you really
Yeah.
do the calculation, you
Hmm.
may need to enroll 18 people depending on your show rate to actually start 10.
Correct.
But they don't understand that because they were never taught.
And that, I've seen that so many times, and I had to learn the hard way. When
Mhm.
you're up there in a group doing a group training and you're talking from your knowledge base, right, about the things that make people successful, and then you're looking around the room and you see that people are like,
Huh?
what is he even talking about, right? Compliance, what is compliance, what does that mean, like what is wait, lead to what, I'm sorry, what did you just say? And once I started seeing those faces, I'm like, okay, all right. So if you look at new hire training, right?
Mhm.
Not all, but a good majority of new hire training is, all right, here's the appointment setting guide. Let's go through it. Here's the interview guide. Let's go through it. Here's your programs. Go back and go meet with a classroom and go talk to a teacher. Go shadow this person and how they do things.
That's like
So
step six.
they go in, right? They go in and they're like, let's go. I'm excited to get on the phones and make some appointments. But then you're like, okay, so they're sitting in their first one-on-one with their director, and they're like, all right, your show rate's really bad, and this right here, and you're not converting it. And they're looking at them like,
What's
really?
the show rate?
Yeah. I don't even know what words are coming out of your mouth right now, right? And it's funny because I've watched this happen. I've
Yeah.
watched it, and I would
Hmm.
say, so as the director, I'm like, okay, so what did you get out of the conversation with your representative? Well, I think we really honed in on those conversion rates today, and they're really going to pick it up. I'm like, I don't even think they knew what any of the things you were talking about were. But if you're cool with it, right? I'm just here to watch. You know what I mean? Like, right. So I just think we're being light and making jokes about it, but I just think
It's
that
true.
a lot of representatives are struggling
Yeah.
because they really don't they're not taught. Okay, they may be given a sheet that says here's the metrics you need to meet, right? And they're like, okay, cool, eight enrollments, 10 enrollments, okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. But if you could break that down, I always believe, man,
Mhm.
clarity in
Yeah.
communication about this is the totality of what it takes to be successful up front
Hmm.
will go leaps and bounds. And even when I love this part because there's such a disconnect in a lot of places between like the marketing department
Hmm.
and admissions. And a lot of the when I was marketing director and I'm doing all these campaigns and working with vendors like different people out there, and I would always say, okay, the leads that you're going to create, right?
Hmm.
What do they typically convert at? Like, how many of them will actually, become a? They'll say, oh, 2%, 3%, 4%. I say, that's not going to work for me. I'm like, well, that's the standard. I'm like, okay, cool. I tell you what, this is what I want to do. I want you to help me train the representatives on your particular type of lead.
Mm.
So that way I can do my training, you can do your training, and we can get that 3% to
Yeah.
10%. And I've proven that it can be done. And I've
Hmm.
had some great vendors that are more than willing to step in and do that kind of stuff. But when a representative doesn't even understand the type of inquiry that they're reaching out to, and they're just blanket calling everyone,
Yeah.
and you wonder why they aren't getting responses, it's because they've not been taught the intricacies of working leads that come in, because people are coming in from all different sort of
Yeah.
ways, right? And they're not all coming like, this is the fun one to me. Oh, they came from our website, so they must be ready to enroll. No, it's because you gave them no other choice to get in touch with you other than fill
To
this
fill out
out,
the paperwork.
right? And you get them on your phone, like, all right, can you come in tomorrow so we can get your paperwork done? Instead of being like, hey, just I got your information because you went to our website, and what I'm trying to do is figure out where you are in your
Hmm.
you know information gathering about going to school or looking at
Yeah.
new careers. Can you help me better understand where you are in that process?
Hmm.
It's amazing. They'll tell you, oh, well, I've been doing some research, and now you can ask other questions.
Because
um,
the pressure is off.
the pressure's off. And when it's so funny when I talk to people about text messaging in admissions, I think text messaging is a beautiful tool, right?
Mhm.
Until you send emails in text, right? Have you seen some of the emails that go out? Hi,
Yep.
my name is Brian, right? I like to do drawings, and I think I saw your information from my whatever, right? We have classes started, and it just keeps going on and on and on. Well,
Hmm.
I try to look at things very logically from the student's perspective. I looked at it that way from marketing,
Yeah.
and I looked at it that way from admissions. So when I look at the cell phone that I have, right, a iPhone 15 or whatever it may be, you're going to send me that email text message, and it's going to come to me in one text.
Yeah.
But a majority of the individuals that we're going to work with to help get into new careers, you know where they're buying their phone from? The Dollar General store, Walmart, track phones, flip phones. Even if it's a small one, they're going to get a broken up 5 text messages from you from sending that email version of a text message.
Yeah. And by the second one, they're gonna stop reading.
They're going to stop reading. They're going to say stop, and now you've really turned them off. So no matter how many phone calls you make, they're going to like, oh, here we go again, right? Uh,
Hmm.
so I always in training, I'm always like, think of it from the perspective of the individuals that you're potentially reaching out to. If you were them,
Hmm.
what kind of text would make you say, who is this, right? Which is the most of the response you're going to get. Who is this?
Exactly.
But it's a response. But it's a response. So when I teach text messages, I'm just like, look, very short. This is who I am. This is the school I represent. I'm going to be calling you from this phone number shortly.
That's it. Less is more.
And then when you call, guess what that phone's going to do? Because it's all interwired in there. It's
Hmm.
going to put your name up there as the person calling because it's already sitting on their phone.
Exactly.
It's a unique little thing. And but I watch people send these, right? And then marketing automation can just get out of control, right? Because there's someone who doesn't work in admissions that built all of that marketing automation in a
Yeah.
lot of cases.
Yep.
So it's like, right, I get it, but you sent them 18 text messages before I even got them on the phone.
Exactly. I always say, would you respond to you? If you heard this voice message, if you received this text message, would you actually respond to that? I've seen emails that has everything in it from the class starts, the tuition, how long is the program, and I'm like, why would a student even come in? All the
Right.
information is right here in an email. All they're going to do is
Exactly.
compare to the next 10 schools, and you'll never hear from them again.
Yeah. I tell you, I had a lot of success just sending video emails. Like, hey, I have a great message from you. And I just made a little,
Mm-hmm.
30-second little video message and say, I am a real person. I'm not the
Yeah.
robot from TV. Uh, the reason I'm reaching, and I would just say it. And now when they click on, you can, there's so much technology. You can see when people click on an email, how many times they open it.
Yeah.
And um, your videos, all those things. There's so many tools, and I've always been like an out of the box thinker. I'm like, the standard way of doing things equals complaints that we're not doing enough.
Yeah, that's so true.
Right. And I'm not saying you have to go out and try everything and spend $10 million trying to attract students, but there are so many simple things. Like I mentioned, Eric, and they also have the AI systems that can just go through your database and
Kate.
sort of
Hmm.
reconnect with people. I've used those, and I'll have success with those things where others don't. And I'm always like, why not? What
Yeah.
What are you doing so well that you're turning people off? That's a great
That's so true.
right.
Do
So,
you realize that there are, like, when it comes to admissions training, sometimes I find that so many advisors are resistant
oh
into training. It's like they hear the term and it's like, oh my gosh, to the point where all of a sudden everyone has an appointment.
yeah,
The time
oh, I have
training
a
is supposed to be.
yeah,
Nobody's cameras are on, people are not paying attention.
yeah,
Why do you think that is? I know back in our day, training was supposed to be a punishment.
right,
Only the suckers were on the training. If you were
right,
below a certain conversion and you're sitting on that call, your peeps are walking past you and they're going, you must have
correct,
slept last week, right? And I
correct.
think advisors still carry that on and they're thinking it's a
Yeah.
punishment.
And I think so. Well, I also think too, a lot of the things we've discussed so far about
Hmm.
the lack of resources, tools, those kind of things in a lot of cases is they don't believe your training is going to have any value because they don't believe what they're doing is the problem. They truly
That's
believe
true.
it's the leads. The leads are
Yeah.
bad. The this is that. But and what's interesting is I have this process that I followed ever since the Navy recruiting people told me that if you don't start putting people in the Navy, we're going to send you to a ship you don't want to go to. Okay,
Wow.
right? And then so I'm like, I got to come up with something to like manage myself, right? I'm having too much fun in Navy recruiting and not doing enough of the activity generating activity stuff, right?
Hmm.
So I created this Apollo 13 thing, right? Because when you add the numbers up, they equal 13. So I gave it a cool name. But what I could do is I could measure myself based on reality. And
Yeah.
the reality is, it does not matter how many leads you contact to get to a quality conversation. As long as you get a certain amount of quality conversations, that shows that what you're saying in your call guide is going to be effective because you'll see the appointment rate,
Hmm.
right? So if you have, if your target is, okay, I want to have 5 quality conversations a day so I can set 3 appointments,
Hmm.
great. Nowhere in this process does it say how many leads you have to touch to get there, how
Yep.
many texts you have to send, how many phone calls you got to make. And I think no one gives their reps that strategy because they're just like, make calls.
You're
Cool.
not at 300 for the day. It's two
Right.
o'clock in the
Right.
afternoon.
Or you'll hear things like, I've called everybody in my database 50 times. Awesome. And the only answer is go call them again. Right. Like,
Yeah.
but instead of saying, you know what, why don't you go back to, day 30 or day, different ways you can go pull lists and call people because it isn't about how many you have to do because
Hmm.
you're not looking for that. What you're looking for is quality conversations I get to have. And from there, that's when you start measuring skills,
Yeah.
right? If they're talking to people and they can check off on the box and say, I did a quality conversation and they're not setting appointments, you can train to it. It gives you a wide open view of, as a trainer or a manager, this is where the issue could lie. So we're going to role play and we're going to do some things like that. Or they're getting a lot of people to come in, but nobody's enrolling. You can figure some things out. And
Exactly.
that worked for me in Navy because all of a sudden I became like the top Navy recruiter, then the recruiter of the year, then station manager. And then when I got in here in this industry, it's been the same thing. I can go into a campus and enroll students when they were having trouble enrolling students for 6 months. And
Hmm.
I'm not like, magical dust. I just follow, okay? I follow the same strategy that I followed then. I use the call guide religiously because it's
Hmm.
broken down into where I can see if my introduction was really like good, or if I
Yeah.
asked the right questions, right? And those kind of things. And I can measure the success of it. And if that's not working and I'm talking to a lot of people, then maybe I need to tweak what I'm saying there. And I
Exactly.
think those are the tools people are seeing. So when you hear the trainer coming, oh, I got to go to training. What are they going to train me on? Right? Like,
Because I'm not the problem.
because I'm not the problem. It's these robot scripts you're giving me that I don't know how to use. It's these leads that'll never answer the phone, but yet they're approaching them in a way that isn't meeting that student where they are. Right. But they don't know that. So it's not really their fault all the time. It's just there's got to be clarity between those two departments, marketing and admissions, as to this is where we're cultivating the individuals that have interest.
Hmm.
And this is how you need to approach those individuals from these different areas. And I think when you do that, you start to see conversion rates go up. That's how I go in and start enrolling students, because I go
Absolutely.
figure it out, right? They don't have the power to go just figure it out,
Hmm. And one
right?
thing leads to the other because you're the one who taught me the Apollo 13.
Yeah,
And I call it the 13 touch conversion formula,
cool, love
right?
it.
And when I start using it with teams, they're like, so how many calls do I have to make? And I'm like, we're not worrying about calls. You're looking for quality conversations. What they
Yeah,
don't realize is if they can't find those quality conversations, it pushes them to make more calls anyway,
that's
because
right.
that's what they're searching for. So they're like, oh my gosh, I've made 50 calls for the day, but I haven't had a quality conversation. They're automatically making more calls and they're not even realizing it because their
Correct.
focus has shifted.
Right. And their calendars can be set up, with your interviews coming in, and then different activity generating activities. Like, I'm going to
Hmm.
make 50 calls in this hour. What do I expect to get out of that?
Yeah.
I'm going to send 100 text messages. What do I expect? How many people do I expect to respond? Right. I mean, you can go through your day, and at the end of the day, you're like, man, I really did a lot of activity generating activities. And man, look at this. I set 4 appointments today.
Yeah.
This is a great day, whether I enrolled anyone or not. And that's been a big problem with admissions, is that if you don't enroll someone, you didn't have success.
Or if you miss your class start, you're horrible, even
But
though you had the
but on
highest
the day to day, you go home
Mhm.
every day just feeling like I didn't accomplish anything because I
anything.
didn't enroll someone today.
Yeah.
Instead of looking at it and go, wow, I set myself up to see 5 people tomorrow. Today was a great day, and tomorrow I think is going to be even better. But there's a caveat to that. If you schedule a lot of appointments, you still have to make the activity generating activities a priority.
Yeah. When I was an advisor, we had like the tri cubes. So it was like three of us in a cubicle, then three over there. And it's so funny because our DOA used to walk around and he would look at our appointment books because he wanted to know what we had set up for the next day. The
Right.
problem with that is people just started piling in appointments who they knew were not going to show
Correct.
because they knew that once he looked at that book and it said 7 appointments, they're left alone for the day.
Right.
And they know none of those appointments are coming through the
Right.
door.
And like I said, look, people aren't trying to fudge the system. People are
Yeah.
not trying to go in and be like, okay, I'm just going to make numbers up because that'll keep everybody off my back.
Hmm.
I think they're just at a point where they don't know what else to do to get
Yeah.
some reality. And I think things like you and I are talking about, the 13 steps, and,
Hmm.
or, I really think that those strategies given to people that want to succeed will
That part.
create success, as long as the trainer or the manager can go in and identify where they're having a hard time and give them some really good training, not just stories of how you did it, but
Hmm.
actual training to help the skills get better, right? And I think if you can merge those things, um, you can really turn around an admissions team who's deflated, they're struggling, and they feel like everything's on them and everybody's blaming them because the class starts didn't go well. You can turn it around pretty quickly over a little short period of time.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Brian, can we talk about some of the pains when it comes to admissions trainers? Because I think so many people feel admissions trainers are overrated, right?
Yeah,
And what they don't understand is number one, training takes a lot of energy
yeah,
because sometimes you have to present the energy for the entire room. You have
right.
a bunch of advisors looking at you like, here we go, another person who's not going to help me. and you
Yeah.
have to show up. I would say one of the major pains, well, two of them. One, when you're training a team, you have the enrollment leadership who's a part of the training. But then when you leave, they don't carry on the training. So now when you return, let's say the next month or if it's quarterly, you feel like you're starting over each time. And it's like you're supposed to carry on.
I know. I know. Well, and training, think of it like this, right? Training is just an event, right? When you have training with, it's just an event for that day. It's like going to a rock concert or something.
Hmm.
It was an event. You enjoyed it. You felt something out of it. You loved it. But then 2 days later, the memory of the rock concert is still there, right? But now you're sort of back into the rhythm that you were in before.
Hmm.
And I think you're 100% right. I always say, who's minding the store? Because it's like,
Yeah.
we came and did this great training, but there's no follow through. So one of the things that I always suggest to everyone, and I do this myself or have done this in my role, every Tuesday afternoon, 30-minute trainings. If you have a student, you don't have to show up to it. It'll be
Hmm.
recorded. If you don't show up to any of them, that's on you. But
Yeah.
I'm going to spend 5 minutes. Hey, how's everybody's day? I'm going to spend 15 minutes training based on what I see as a group, right? Giving skill suggestions, giving, stories or whatever's going to make that training impactful. And then 10 minutes of saying exactly this. What did you take away from this training individually?
Hmm.
Sweet. Now, what they took away from the training isn't up to me to say, oh, well, you should have learned this or you should have
Yeah.
learned that. Because as a trainer, you're putting all your energy into the presentation of material in a way that everyone can find something that they can go enact right away. And that's what those trainings should be. They should be
Hmm.
something they can go put into practice at 2:30, right? And if you do that, and that's so easy for managers to do, because as busy as you are as a manager, you're not that busy to be able to,
No.
to block off a 30-minute thing where you just meet with your team, you
Hmm.
engage with them, and you let them tell you what they think about it, or and it's fun because they'll tell you long stories if they want to, and you got to manage the time.
Yeah.
But I think this consistent training after the event,
Hmm.
right? And you and I have both done the event of
Yeah.
training, and then you have a system that can carry on. Like I saw that some team finished it in like 6 weeks or something.
Yeah, it's supposed to
Right,
take, I like to spread it out, right? So
right,
they're not overwhelming. And I'm like, how the heck did you guys complete? It's like over 120 lessons, videos, like skits and stuff.
yeah,
And they said, well, every single time we watched it and applied it, it actually worked. So it
right. They were
drove them
thirsty.
to want to keep logging on. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay.
Yeah, they were thirsty. They've been out in the desert of admissions, and they were thirsty. And you came along and said, "Here,
Yeah.
look, here's some strategies that you
Hmm.
can apply." And that's what I always loved about training. I mean, that is what
Yeah.
has always been my passion about it, is that if you train the right way in reality, you don't just train philosophy of how things work.
Hmm.
If you train in reality, and they can go and implement it, right? Whether you're way up here at this level and you're training your direct reports to go out and train that information or whatever, or you go down at the lower level and you're in the weeds going, okay, let's do this. If you train from reality, you have no choice but to find success from your
Yeah.
team. They're going to feel better. They're going to be more motivated. And when I saw you put that, I said, you know what? They were out in the desert and they were dying for water, and you gave them some, and they didn't stop drinking. And I can't wait to see the results really over like a 60-day period from this
Yeah.
team compared to the prior 60 days, right? Because that's probably going to be off the charts.
They
Right.
already started to see increases. One is like, I've never even spoken to this many students before, or I've never had a lobby full of people.
Right.
And I think sometimes people feel like, when people come in to train, it's like, all right, one and done, we get paid. And it's like, no, I
Absolutely.
structured my training a certain way where there's assignments, and I need you to tell me exactly what you've learned,
Right.
because we don't do this for the hell of it. I actually want to see you succeed. So
That's
I
right.
need to make sure you're digesting this material.
Oh yeah. When I was training for 8 hours a day or 9 hours a day,
Mhm.
to me, I coached basketball for like 15 years too. Every other weekend, I
Oh,
used to be, I don't know how I have time to work because I'm always like at these tournaments. But while these kids are playing the game,
Uh-huh.
If you saw me after the basketball game, I'm soaking wet. I'm like jazz, like I was in the game,
Like you're in
right?
the
So
game. Hmm.
I did the same thing as a trainer. I mean, I am in the game of that moment, and I'm trying to take you and help you see things a different way. And when you see that happen with people, right, just like your little group, when you see that person go from I don't want to be here to 4 hours later, and look, your entire body is just like trying to find energy for you to get through these things, and you see that person go,
Hmm.
that's it. That's a trainer. And that's really what you're after is a shift in the mindset, not because you told them something great, because they self
Yeah.
digested it and it came back up and it said, oh my goodness, right?
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I would use things in doing training, I would use things that could challenge people's ego. I would say, so tell me, how many students do you enroll a year, or how many appointments do you
Uh,
set a day, or something like that? And I'm like, okay, so you get how many leads a year? Like I don't know, 500, and you enroll 60 people. You're the top dog here. Awesome. Well, what are you doing so well that you didn't enroll 90 people or 80 people, right? And just trying to get them to see
yeah.
things from a perspective of where you're placing that stamp of success
Hmm.
could be so much more, but
Yeah.
you've settled in that big bird's nest, right? Of this is where success is. And that's why, great reps sometimes have a really hard time being directors of admissions and leading their team.
Yep.
It's very hard when you learn how to be a master of your arena, and you have to switch that and go, okay, now I have to make you a Jedi master, you a Jedi master, you a Jedi master. And that can be daunting, and the pressure of that, because in a lot of cases there's nobody there to say, okay, let me show you really how to motivate a team, how to get your people to realize they're better than what they are.
Yeah.
And and it's sad because how many times in 18 years, 19 years together with us,
Mhm.
you see that you're like, okay, man, we're going to do this, and then all of a sudden it's like and you feel bad because this person was set up for failure,
Yeah.
right? Because they don't work at your camp, and it's just
Hmm.
it's something we deal with. But as a trainer, I think you have the responsibility to be aware that you need to go help people.
Yes.
That's always been a big thing for me. Like someone will call me and say, hey, we think you need to go train on this. I'm like, I did it yesterday. What are we talking about here? I've already identified that needs to happen, and I put something in place and went and did it. Like, why you ask? We think we should go do it. I'm not a thinker. Let me get the concept of what needs to
Exactly.
happen, and let me go try some action. So,
Exactly. Well, with the second part to that, when it comes to pains of trainers, I think sometimes enrollment leaders they see trainers as an intimidation than a support. It was a couple years ago. I was training a team of 15 people, and I'm remote. Okay, so the enrollment leader, it's like there was this friction all the time because they thought that I was there to replace them. And it's like, number one, I don't want any part of that anymore. We've been DOAs, VPs, regionals. It's
right,
like, this is where my heart is,
right,
right? Trust me, you're okay. And it was just this friction all the time because instead of using me as the support, DOAs, they have a lot of, they have a lot on their plate. So it's like, I'm your support system. When you can go and do whatever you need to do and you know that your team is here, and now when I give them back to you, they're
yeah.
better. It's like some enrollment leaders are looking at it as, no, this is my replacement. Or if they get the team to another level,
It makes me
now
look
I'm
better.
exactly.
Right.
And it's not
Yeah.
true. We're your support.
Yeah, and that's a real. I think that's a real concern for any director, right? Like, why are they bringing this trainer? Why are they bringing this
What am I
trainer?
not doing?
Yeah, why are they bringing this trainer in here to? I can train. I'm doing my training. I'm doing
Yeah.
that stuff, right? So, um, I think that you have to, before you ever come in with any kind of training plan,
Hmm.
ask that director. This is how you kind of eliminate some of that friction. You know, where do you need any help? Because I think you're doing great, right? You're a director of admissions. I know you must be doing great, or you wouldn't have the role. let's be real people here. Where do
Mhm.
you want me to focus? Because I think sometimes it's that lack of direction over you,
Yeah.
which takes away that mental state of, okay, wait a minute, they're going to go do something. I don't really have a part in it. They're going to make them look good. I'm going to look bad because they should have. Well, why weren't you training these people? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and that's all playing in your head. It's all played in our head too, in
Yep.
those different roles. But I think if you just approach them as a person and say, hey, congratulations on the role. Where would you like me to focus to give you a little boost? And it can really bring that tension down. And possibly they start using more as a resource, but it's there. I mean, the minute you walk in the building, it's there. You can feel it. They're looking. They don't. They might shake your head, right? Right, because you're a trainer. You already come in with like a pop and a step, and you just know you're like the smiling person. So there is that, but not
Yeah.
everyone. Okay, not every. We're not boxing everyone in here, but there's been a lot of instances over the year where you walk in as the trainer, and it's like, why do we need trainer? Right? I have
And
people
it's
ask me directly,
exactly.
why do we need you? I don't know. They hired me to come talk to you, so there must be a
Uh-huh.
reason. Call them, ask them. I don't know.
Yeah, I found that over the past several months, I've developed closer relationships with my DOAs.
Right.
Because now they're seeing me as their right hand instead of the person who is trying to replace them, right?
And
So it's like
that's
that
when it starts
connection
to
where
become
it's like, what do you
effective.
need now?
Yeah, that's when you start to become effective, and that's when your not only your training program grows for you,
Yeah,
but their belief that the things that you're giving their representatives are the strategies they need to be
exactly.
doing, because their success is only going to grow because of that, right? I mean, um, but no, I think you do a wonderful job out there because it's a hard challenge not only to win people over that they need training, which to
Yeah,
me boggles my mind that there are schools that don't have consistent training,
at all.
but still want the results that they're struggling to get. Like, okay,
Yeah.
well, I mean, I get it. You gave them all initial training 4 months ago, right? That concert has already moved on to Europe. They don't even know where they're playing anymore, right? So I think no, but so I think and I like I said, I always encourage you to just keep letting people know what you're doing. Keep letting people know that you're probably the biggest supporter of their success.
Yeah.
And not only will you continue to have success, I think you're going to bring a lot of success to a lot of schools that are allowing you to. So kudos to you, my friend.
And thank you, Brian. And kudos to you too, because I learned a lot from you.
The best advice I ever got in my entire life from a couple of the mentors that I have is that um, well, I'll give you the story of it real quickly.
Hmm.
I'm at a dinner when I first started getting into admissions training. Had an opportunity to train with someone who became a really good friend of mine and a mentor for a lot of years. And they're going around the room and they're saying, "What's your goal in life? What's your goal in life?" Well, I was like 30, and I'm an old Navy guy. And I'm like, you know what? I want to be the guy on the stage with 10,000 people listening to what I have to say. So they moved on to the next person. And the person next to me, who became a good friend too,
Uh-huh.
she turns to me and she says, "Well, Brian, what do you have to say?" And being young, I was like, "Oh, I'll just figure it out when I get there." But that moment stuck with me, and everything I've done since is
Wow.
based upon trying to create a voice of what I have to say. And then
Yeah.
it became okay. I want to be instead of I want to be on the stage with 10,000 people, listen to what I have to say. I want to help 10,000 people. So to this point in my career, I've trained almost 9,000 people.
Wow.
So when I reach out to someone and say, "Hey, I love what you're doing. Is there any way that we could talk and any areas you might need help?" I don't say, "Pay me 5 grand and I'll help you." Because my mission, my goal has now become to get to that 10,000 mark.
Hmm.
And then that can take me to my next goal.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, training is just, it was the first time I saw someone do admissions training. I said, that's what I want to do for as long as I can do it.
Wow.
Hmm.
Well, look, you're very good at it. You're an amazing mentor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, and I love it. I love it. You've given me so many tools, over the past several months that some of them were, concepts that we've used for a long time, but sometimes it's when someone explains something totally different, it's like,
Right. Yep.
wow, okay. And the skills are so easily transferable where you can
Right.
get advisors to see it from that point in order for them to grow too. So
Right.
thank you so much, Brian. This has been such an insightful conversation.
Oh
We
yeah, a lot of
definitely
fun.
have to be part two because there are so many different topics that we did not even get to.
Right.
Okay, but we are already on the hour, so we already
All right.
know when time goes that quick.
Oh yeah. Well, look, thanks so much for having me. Anytime. We love talking about this, and if it can help
Yes.
other people, help their teams, and get rid of some of that pressure and struggle, I'm all in.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Brian, for joining us today. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in again. Until next time, bye.
Right.
I really hope that you enjoyed that episode. I have been working diligently to bring awareness to career schools. There's so much that they have to offer our students and our community. Every single role within the admissions process is critical, whether you're a part of the admissions team, financial aid, career services, academics, everyone deserves a voice. Admissions is the first point of contact for your school, so you want to ensure that you have a team who exudes confidence, passion, and a clear understanding of effective communication with our potential students. I totally understand the pain of missed class starts, low appointment and enrollment conversions, and this is why I created Next Level Admissions Training by Motivate with K.A.T. This platform is a step-by-step process, and it is going to train your new and tenured advisors in every single step of the enrollment process to ensure that our students are inspired and they're ready and prepared to start class. Admissions is not easy. It can be very challenging, but it's definitely worth it. So if you're ready to take your school to the next level, head on over to lessons.motivatewithkat.com and check out Next Level Admissions.